need a larger room than this, and maybe that would be part of that addition to the administrative building. Maybe we do more of a hall.
Conference room?
Conference room. Conference room I picture being smaller, but more of a meeting room, or I don't know. Whatever you want to call it, a larger room for larger meetings. Going back to the truck shop, I've been involved with and witnessed numerous expansions and builds, and never, ever have I heard, we built it too big. You know what I mean? Never. But every single project, if I went back and looked at it, every single project was built too small. So the projection wasn't there. I walked into an amazing brand new built truck shop, and the owner was just very proud of it, and like he should be. And he's like, "What do you think?" And I looked around and said, "It's too small." He's like, there was nothing in it. There's nothing in it at all drive-through bays. And I said, "It's too small." He's like, "How do you figure?" And I said, 20 below, and you don't have 2 trucks jailed up, you have 7 trucks jailed up. And they all have 53-foot trailers on them. And this is a truck shop. This isn't what we're dealing with, but just an example. They didn't go big enough. And today he kicks himself for not going 10 foot more. You know, that's all he needed was 10 foot more, and he could have got that truck in and trailer in together without having one of them sit outside. Because you bring it in, you thaw it, you take that out to bring the other piece in. By the time you get that one thawed, that one's froze. So you're just going back and forth. Anyway, we're not fixing trucks here, except for our own, and they're not 100 feet long. So
And they're not doing major overhauls.
correct.
I mean, they're minor nut and bolt.
I mean, most of our large maintenance items are taken somewhere.
Sent out. You might be changing a hydraulic hose or something of that sort.
Josh, do you see our public works growing versus our population growing?
Well, I think with population growth, I think there's gonna be growth, yes.
Well, from what I see with communities I work with, it doesn't necessarily go with population, it goes with the number of residencies. So we're having more houses built, we're having subdivisions built, roads built. The more roads you get, it doesn't really go with population because we're having more houses, population's declining. So we have more to take care of even if there's less people.
I just assume that more houses meant more people, but you're right.
It all depends on the demographic that's living in those houses.
If we split a bunch of 40s up, there's gonna be some roads in there that are gonna need maintaining, and
Right.
that's gonna be more miles that we have to work on.
I see our public works only growing at this point because we do have a lot of land division going on.
I'd probably, if you go back 15 years, we'd probably gain 10 miles worth of road.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I guess that's where, I don't think population is a good gauge on our public works growing. It's more what's going on the land.
Right.
That's why I asked.
Well, as far as our winter work, you get a typical Wisconsin winter, and those guys could be plowing snow 4 days out of 5. And the one day they're out cleaning up. So the potential actually to have that third truck on the road is there. I mean, we've been lucky for many years.
Right.
Well, right now, I think you're at about 9 hours to plow your township.
Yes, 9 to 11.
9 to 11, that's pushing 2 guys already.
Thanks too.
Yeah, per
Per truck.
Yeah.
So you're already getting out there
yeah,
with,
we're at 20 hours.
Well, that's what I was asking, if we have a potential for a third guy and an additional truck, is this building gonna house it?
See, and that's why I say go with what they've got. What do they got? 5 bays?
Yeah,
I think that's what it says, 5 bays.
I think that would protect us for quite a few years.
And 5
that
bays
5
plus the wash bay.
See, I think that
That's
I personally think the wash bay could be used for a loader bay.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
Absolutely.
Right, why have it sitting bare
if it's a bay,
90% of the time?
all we can do is wash in there? No, we're gonna park stuff there.
Well,
Right.
to be honest, I actually brought up the wash bay. The only reason I like it separate is because there's a lot of moisture in there and you don't want that flying through the whole building.
True.
But it's certainly, you can park something in there and when you gotta wash, pull that out, pull the truck in, wash it. It's not that it can't be used, it's just, it separates that from the rest of that building.
As far as the amount of square footage per person, it was 7 square feet per person. I found that in here when we were talking. So, and maybe you guys mentioned that while I was looking for it. I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's all I've got. I think we got the chance to build what we want / need. Needs obviously more important than wants, but I fear that if we cut it back too much, it's gonna be too small.
Okay. I do have one question if you're,
Yeah. go ahead.
so at the moment, you're talking about possibly doing voting in the shop, which I don't think is a bad idea. At that point though, the only thing keeping that old hall in place is the EMTs.
Right.
In the first phase, would it maybe be good to try to figure out just enough of an expansion here to get the EMTs over here? So that could actually just come down.
And I thought about that as we were talking, and it's kind of like moving the voting equipment. It's gonna be a struggle, but I think we could make it work. I mean, even if say the hall stayed there for now and that portion of the building, like the EMT portion of the building, was removed to make room for the new shop, maybe that.
Well,
I
I guess
don't know, maybe
Or
part
we
of
could
the.
my
rent
thoughts were if we
Al's
were
building.
thinking of bringing them over and they needed like this space here, we could add on another meeting room that could eventually be split up into offices. You know, if we were going to go bigger on that. I guess my thought is that building has been a maintenance problem. And if we're looking at taking some of it out of there, we only do 2 things. Well, I mean, we've got, you know, the kitchen rented, but I think that's limited at this point. But we only got 2 things we do in there. We do voting, some meetings for us, and then we've got the EMTs. And if we can get the EMTs out of there and we get the voting into the bays, do just enough so that we can do that. I'd like to see that in phase 1, I guess. Because then that building becomes unnecessary and can move towards the next step.
Right.
Or we could rent a building from like Al Wenzel for the EMTs until we'll go on to phase 2.
I'd love to see a part of that truck shop, like have a room in it where the EMTs could go in,
It could be figured in there too, yeah.
you know.
So you suggest the admin building as proposed in this packet that we're all referencing that addresses the roughly 300 square feet of EMS need, building that into the Public Works building in phase 1. Having proposed saying, hey, we're giving you some guidance, this is what we're discussing. We're saying
That's part, that room or 300 square feet could be repurposed at any time for anything. You know, maybe turn into storage. I don't know.
I'm concerned about doing public works and then piecemealing something over here before we then add on to the rest. I would either rather see it put into the public works or listen to what Lorelei had said, and maybe we can rent something cheap for them in the meantime. I would hate to see piecemealing something together over here for them to then
Move this to here.
finish it later. You know, I would rather focus there than focus
typically
And
here.
I think this one over here
It's,
already has bathroom facilities and it's vacant.
All
I
three
have
of these
no
over
idea.
here are used right
On the
now.
other side of
Are they?
All 3 of them, yes.
Okay.
By Murphy's there,
this part that's down here.
Is that all?
Okay.
all 3 of them are used,
Okay.
yes.
Is there room down
Part
there
of
at the
the-
end, do you see?
The location of the whole thing is your drain field, is it? If you're utilizing this building, the drain field's gotta be there.
Rob, you want to show them that other one where it's replacing the existing one that I gave you? They brought that in
when's Keller scheduled to be here next?
Tuesday.
This Tuesday? What time?
I think so, 1 o'clock. I believe it's Tuesday.
Tuesday or Monday, I don't
Tuesday.
remember, I don't have my
So
big book,
20th?
but
5:20,
Cause Monday, I know.
1
20th at
p.m.
1 o'clock.
It's on my phone.
Just as a spectator, I starting out tonight and seeing what you got accomplished tonight, I think that you did a hell of a job. I mean, you decided to go in phases, you decided maybe going with the shop first. I mean, you're trying to trim things. I think you made some hell of a progress. I'm very impressed.
I am too, I
like the way
think I got a lot
that's
of.
set up, because we're actually still keeping that there. When did you get this?
I received that when Keller came, before he came in the door. I asked him to email me what it would look like if we just replaced that Public Works building, and that's what they have drawn up. So I am the only one that has that. Sorry,
No, that's all right. I mean, as far as,
it's over here. This one,
we could,
Oh, that's not it.
as long as the square
Just
footages were
replacing
where
it.
we needed it,
That's pretty close.
Yeah.
Still have to sell it.
as long as the square footages were where we needed it,
Yeah, the,
Well, this-
Good in
yeah.
phases.
the only real drawback I see there is,
He moved it
what
back.
do you do in the interim? Okay, you go in and demolish the existing building, everything sits outside
Al
for
Wenzel's building. I thought of that,
6 months.
The one over here?
yeah. Al Wenzel's got some vacant buildings over in that new part. I think we could rent those just to store our equipment until this building is built. I mean, it isn't gonna take that long to get that one structure up.
Yeah, we would need it up before winter,
You know, if we can,
whatever winter.
not this one.
Not
No.
this, no, yeah.
Or whatever
But
year.
you're right, I would have them start, yeah, I would have them start like the early of the spring, as soon as they can break ground, even so much as putting mats down to be able to. Because they're not putting a basement in, so they just have to thaw the surface.
So if we break it out in phases like that, do we still do, does it still go referendum, it still goes public
Yes.
hearing, the whole
Yes.
shebang has to be in there?
I want
so-
everything out there,
Well,
yes.
and I agree, I agree it should be,
Yeah.
but that also impacts the time frame. So like getting it before winter is not really an option.
Yeah, not this year. We couldn't
Right.
do anything
No.
until 24 months before 2029, 27.
Yeah.
Unless,
That's when money starts coming in.
yes, but I have been reworking the budget and I do have some money in the budget that I could
You
use.
still want to start in spring, your winter costs are too big.
No, I don't disagree
Much
with you.
as
I
I
was
wanted,
just saying that, you know, for the
I like
purpose of.
Keller's thoughts were they, get it ready, bid it out sometime in, say, November
Mhm.
for next year's construction, not.
Right.
You know.
So
And
we-
I think, a steel building is kind of what they were looking at for that shop, and those go up pretty quick.
Did you
Yeah,
guys get
yeah, once
this?
you get the concrete down.
I'm sorry, this is the calendar and dates for a proposed build. Did everyone get that?
I think we got that last meeting.
So it looks like construction documents would be ready like in October of '25 and finalize the bidding in up to January of '26. Approval and pre-construction March of '26 and break ground 2026. That is the earliest, the absolute earliest, and that would be if everything fell in line, and it never does.
Right.
So I would actually delay it to 2027, I think, for breaking ground. If it were up to me, which of course it's not, but
And we do have to figure in all the time-consuming stuff of public hearings, and if it,
Yeah.
public hearing goes bad, and we have to go back to the drawing board, I mean, all that
Yeah.
has to be considered.
Tearing
And,
down a
Yeah.
public works, which
In the
would
plan.
be without a
and
public works
2027 would be
for as long
great
as the-
just for the banking part of it, if we do have to do a construction loan in the meantime. So that, to me, is a better idea than
Well, that's
2026,
new public
that
works.
just seems so
Public works
soon.
now is- Is it? No way.
So, Josh,
really bad.
No, that's over here.
what direction are we heading?
Well, that's where I wanna,
We need some
Circle back.
conclusion.
right. Christie already circled back and concluded before I got to talk, so now we gotta do
I
it
didn't
again.
mean to, sorry.
Now we gotta do it again. Do we have enough notes from tonight's meeting to give Keller at that meeting?
I was gonna ask if it would be all right to give him an email tomorrow morning, give him some directions so that he has some of these answers ready.
That is what he's waiting for, actually, from us.
That
Okay.
would be really good.
He was looking forward to what we came up with at this meeting
Okay,
to get
So
some
he can be
direction.
prepared, yeah.
okay.
So,
He,
excuse me, are we looking at the new proposal to remove the old building and reconstruct using pretty much the same square footage?
Yeah,
I see that.
Or using their other proposals and rebuilding that way, you know,
Can I see
using.
that, Jeff?
Don't mind the spelling of the
I don't
town.
think we should get rid of the old truck shop yet
And I thought,
and keep that for storage until.
I would love to see this building continuous with the public works and everything flow as one building.
after all phases are complete, you're saying?
Yeah, but. the
You mean public
logistics-
works onto this one, you mean?
Yeah,
Well,
just
that
keep
is
going,
L,
but, the
This
logistics
is the
didn't
other
work out
one,
well.
Keeping the old one there.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, it would condense like a lunchroom, a break room, it would condense bathrooms, it would condense, a few things, but, Public Works was not in favor of that.
yeah, your L shape is tough in the winter with the snow.
Yeah,
It fills in on the north side.
Well, and putting them together was also a construction added.
yes,
I mean, when you separate the buildings, we can go with a metal building over there and block building, wood construction here. So you put them together, you eliminate that option.
and that's another thing, do you want metal building at a 50-year life, or do you want a block building at a 100-year life?
If the metal building's built well, there's a lot of them that last a long time.
And that's exactly what he said. He said, I'm just telling you, just putting it in a perspective, he said, but that doesn't
It gets
necessarily
down to
hold
the
true.
point you get what you pay for.
Yep, and then the gauge of the metal, the overhang, it all comes into play. So, and the pitch of the
You must
roof.
think I'm younger than I am.
So, those are probably something he would like to know. I think that's something you should determine tonight, so I can give him like guidance, because that'll affect the cost enormously.
Well, have we decided that we can cut down the square footage on our public works building? And do we need a 2,500 square foot office space in our public works building?
I don't know about the office space, I like the footprint we have, the one we have.
I realize that a lot of it goes, part storage, a break room, the tool room, that's all in that place, uniform area. I think Rob broke it down pretty good. I mean, I'm not in favor of eliminating bays, but I think a lot of the other things can be shaved down to.
Could you use the shop office as a break room, or the break room as a shop office?
Exactly. Do we need 3 more desks for them to put their feet
No.
on or not?
That was out right at the beginning, I said one desk.
Why don't-
Sorry, they don't need 2 desks.
We're gonna maybe, now that we have a strategy in place for making progress, and I do think this was the most productive meeting we've had on this topic by far. Why don't we give them, Keller, the objective of, hey, we've identified we're not gonna be building a voting hall right now. We need to reduce the cost impact, and we've identified that doing it in a phased approach is, we've all agreed on, we want to cut this project down and not do everything at once. So that's a complete, I think, unanimous decision at this point. We're gonna cut this project down and identify a few phases. Phase 1, the most important need being the public works building, and we'd like to see you try to show us something where you shave that down to 6,500 square feet. We want to keep the bays that have been identified, if they can be trimmed even just a little bit. but keeping the 5 bays and the wash bay concept in the design, but maybe trimming some of the other things. Get as close to 6,500 square feet as you can. And for now, show us where that best fits on this property with tearing nothing down
Okay.
and tearing down which one? Because I've heard both tonight. I've heard tear down the town hall and I've heard tear down the cold storage. And I don't know if I've heard both, but I've heard, I'm kind of Switzerland on that. I don't know that I have a strong feeling. If you don't tear anything down, you risk putting the public works building where you don't want it. And I think that's the risk that I'm a little worried about, but.
Is tearing the old building down, not the truck shop, but the old
Town
building down, does that have to go in the referendum?
If we're doing it in phases, the first referendum, as what I'm listening to here, would be phase 1, and that would be, are we gonna tear the public works building down, the existing one? And personally, I would say yes, and put the new one right where it is, except set it far, a little back off the road, because structurally, they gave it a lifespan of 5 years. So if we don't tear it down now, in 5 years, we're gonna be tearing it down.
And from an environmental standpoint, I think it needs to go also.
Yes, and
Okay.
from an environmental standpoint, that is a very true
Does
statement.
that have, does anyone
The,
go?
Dan brought up a good point that if we tear down the public works and try to build a new one there, and if you want it set back farther off the road,
A little bit.
we're building on top of the drain field of the existing town hall.
The existing drain field, they don't feel as good anymore.
But while we're still using the building, we'd have to have that there.
Right, but if we tear that building down and dig up that drain field, Public Works would have to house somewhere else. We all know that.
Right.
And if it's summertime, it's not such a big deal. But if it's not done by winter, then we have a big deal.
Okay.
So maybe we need a time frame on the build.
And you can move 30 feet to the east or so before you hit the drain field. There's a chain link fence that runs right alongside of it.
Okay. And that chain link fence is the outside.
Drain field isn't a big
Yeah,
deal.
it's
Outside
real
storage.
close, real close to
Okay.
the existing, I mean, like a setback. That mound that's there is the drain, why it's a mound. I have no
So
idea.
Josh, wherever you build that, you need to make sure you build it for future use to make sure you can build onto it. That end wall has to be able to be taken out and added
Right.
future, so you gotta make sure that you got room to go wherever you position it.
Yeah, actually, you could build a building to be able to expand north and south,
Right,
Right.
exactly.
because you got room.
Yes, well then, yeah, you'd make sure the builder knows that you gotta have the walls available to move out.
Right.
And I've already put a bug in the ear of the developer for the solar, because they have to be vested in the community, and we don't have enough nonprofits to be totally vested, except for Wakely. So I've asked them if they would replace the blacktop. And they didn't say no, so.
Well, the other point is if you don't start this till 2027, you're already 2 years into the 5 years of the building that needs to be torn down.
Very good point,
anyway,
Patty.
so,
Yes,
You
So
know,
it-
I mean,
yeah.
I think the consensus should be get rid of that building.
Okay.
I'm with you
That's a good
though.
point, yeah.
I don't necessarily know, is there a timeline here that we have to get this through to Keller, but to have them cut from here, they're gonna cut stuff and then we're gonna go, well, maybe we shouldn't have cut that. Maybe that's something we should all discuss and present to them. I don't.
Well,
know.
I think
They
the
know.
architect is the one that is going to know what the square footage is. I mean, if you,
But the architect isn't
Go
gonna
to
go, hey,
line.
you guys don't need a break room and a office.
right, yes.
That's something where
you don't
he
think
can't
on
make
past
that decision.
experience, he would?
Well, maybe.
Well, he has them
But-
separated out now, so if we don't
If we're not
guide him,
specific.
you know, like, why don't you throw those together
Sure.
instead?
Okay,
He's gonna leave it because it gives him the impression that we're good with it.
okay.
So right now, phase one doesn't necessarily contemplate tearing down the town hall or doing anything with that. There will be some ongoing maintenance costs to that, but that gives us a place to vote in the interim, because it's gonna take time, and then we're not displacing our voting operations for 2 to 3 years. We're not displacing the tenant, we're not displacing EMS, we're not displacing any of that stuff at this exact time. And if we have to address office, admin, additional space in the next 3 years prior to moving into a phase two, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if there's any natural segregation of duties where, I mean, EMS only needs 300 or 500 square feet for what they do. If there's another facility in the town that's close by that they could rent or you could buy. I mean, you're buying. There are commercial and business properties in this town that are for sale that you can buy for probably $70 a square foot compared to building for $400 a square foot. Right. So I mean, I don't know that that's it. Yeah, but okay. So we're gonna let Keller know that where we're at on some of these changes, modifications. We're moving in the right direction.
Yep. And
we have some agreements on those things.
That email tomorrow is a great idea to get them.
Make them work on it.
Right.
Next Tuesday's the meeting. My minutes reflect that, you know, we had an in-depth discussion to refine the needs and better direct the company we've engaged for this, with the next meeting being on Tuesday, the 20th at 1 p.m.
All right. Yes, go ahead.
Last time I was here, I'll admit that I was a little bit nervous with you, with what Keller had. So I agree with Mr. Furkey to the fact that I'm thankful you guys are having this meeting that you're having tonight, talking with that you are. The few little details that I can think of is I've seen enough buildings you'll never build it big enough. And it's cheaper to build it the first time. The forms are laying there, the people, everything's set up to do it the first time. So even if you build larger than what you need and you grow into it and you just be determined of the fact that we're not going to heat this, we're not going to use this until it's done. There's been, I think the Renaissance building, I think that was like 2 stories tall, and the 3rd story they built right away and never used it until future expansions. I don't really like the idea of building a building that's going to last for 100 years because we're sitting right next to a building that you're going to tear down that isn't 100 years old, that you put the extra investment into building materials.
Right.
I would say please insulate it as well as you can, because the upfront costs are pretty expensive, but the operating costs, if you can actually minimize the heating and cooling aspects of it, would actually pay off in not too long a time. So as convenient as I think the drive-through garage doors would be, doubling the garage doors, I hate to go against what Mr. Furkey's saying. Yes, it would be much more convenient, but every linear inch of those garage doors, if you're doubling that, is going to significantly change your heating and cooling costs of that building. So for a little bit of extra inconvenience of backing in or not having that convenience, you're probably going to cut your heating bill. I don't know if it's going to be in half, but probably 30 to 40% out of it. I really agree with making one building overbuilt that has the qualifications of what's required for the public to come in there. Because if you build one building, then you're going to only have one set of bathrooms, you're only going to have one set of heating and cooling, you're only going to have one of everything. It's going to be bigger, but it's going to be one source of everything. And if there's a maintenance call, you're going to have upkeep on one building versus multiples. But I guess in closing, thanks for looking at it more than in the last meeting that I was in.
Mm-hmm.
So, but.
All right.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you go taller's a problem with heating and cooling. I don't know what your guys' backgrounds are on that. In-floor heat's kind of a good way to keep the heat on the floor versus up in the ceiling. And if you build taller, I don't know anything like Lorelei does, but if square footage is the problem, then you just go taller, and a forklift and some pallet racking can give you a whole lot more storage. But that's my 3 cents, I guess.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've actually changed what I thought of with drive-through bays when he brought up voting. That changed my mind on having garage doors on both sides. So I agree with him too. If you're gonna be maybe having it for 2 different purposes, you wouldn't want all the garage doors in there.
And I don't know that we that we would utilize a drive-through bay like say an RV dealership or something like that, where you're constantly how many times do our trucks hook to trailers? We very seldom do we pull a trailer if it's anything more than a chipper, you know?
Yeah, and
So-
that's not in the shop.
Right, so,
It's not being pulled in there. I mean, if it's being pulled in there, use the tractor and pull it in there.
for a few different reasons, I don't know that I would be in favor of drive-through bays either.
We did utilize mezzanines because our building was so high.
Okay.
We have mezzanines in there and store stuff up in the mezzanines
Okay.
with the forklift, and that really is handy,
Right,
and it utilizes the space.
Of course, you've got an inventory.
Yeah.
That's things that we don't have. I mean, you're not gonna store plow up there.
But what about voting machines?
Yeah.
What
Well,
about
yeah.
skids?
There are different,
They have to be in a
possibly,
locked
but
room.
Yep.
They have to be secured.
Well, you can put a security up there. That's what we did.
We can put a fence.
I guess be a cage, yeah.
so we have a list of stuff that we can email off to Keller tomorrow, correct?
I'm emailing them as we speak. I'm writing them down.
All right. Anything else on this, or shall we move on to the next item?
Let's move on, Josh.
All right. Okay. Forgot where my agenda was.
yeah, where did you go?
I wrote on the back of
Have a good night.
There it is.
Item number 9. Finalize zoning ordinance for 2025. So we had went through it all. And we, Laura, you were still retyping it, correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I'm probably 15 pages more than what I was last meeting because a lot of things have come up
Yep.
health-wise, I'm sorry.
No, that's totally fine. We would like to insert the verbiage for the,
Noted.
Outlets?
Outlets.
yes, outlets that we talked about today.
Wasn't there something else
Outlot
that,
definition is what it
yeah,
was. Land division. I have a note here from the last meeting of land division. My question was, how do we put in writing the way we want land divided? That was my, that was my words. But that's also part of our, would that be part of this zoning ordinance?
We're gonna change it, we would make some amendments to it.
Mhm.
And I had notes on mine that we were adding something about the no easements.
Easement clarification, I also have a note, private entity allows access to another private entity, public and commercial, public right of way, private owned, accessible to public, but maintained by owner.
Yeah, the county says you can't use it as your main source of entrance.
Okay,
And that was part of the discussion from last meeting, why we wanted it in our ordinance, because the county, you're absolutely correct, they do say that, but it depends on who the zoning person is, because the one before that allowed them. So it was something we wanted to solidify.
and we would, we'd have to come up with a way that we can incorporate that into our zoning ordinance, so we are looking to finalize.
And where.
And where, right.
I don't know where the appropriate place would be for it.
Well, the other thing too is you have to have 75 foot of frontage, which
We can,
I still,
I'm about that.
See, Carly?
why?
5 o'clock comes off the road.
I know we talked about flag lots, but I didn't see a problem with a flag lot. What's the problem with it? Because right now, well, I said it was on my road, but if you drive around Saratoga, I'd say that rule was in existence 20 years ago, you'd have 30% less houses. That's your tax base.
well, from your area going towards town on the north side of the road, almost all of those between Hollywood in Star Lane, there's a lot of 50, 60-foot frontage property.
There's 33 footers right on my road. When Bob broke up that stuff.
Those lots, yeah,
Yeah,
2 acre lots.
those,
But they, you know, the
There's
lots
33.
are, they're big lots, but they're narrow and long. They go,
right.
they're
Well,
40
no, they
acres
got,
long.
it opens up when you get to the back, but you got a 33 foot.
Yeah.
That was always a standard that stuck in my head. I was wondering why it got 75 foot. Because it keeps you from breaking, if you own an acre and you got a house and a shed on it, and now you got an acre up front with your house on it, but you got a 40 behind you, you can't have somebody build back there on that 20.
Right.
It's a tough thing to do. You're actually keeping a person from building a house back there.
Yeah, there's a lot of properties that don't have large acreage, but they
On
don't
the
have any
frontage,
frontage.
So with the outlet definition addition, our discussion about the land division and how we wanna word it, easements, public right of way, all that. I don't see us finalizing the
Correct.
zoning ordinance for 2025 tonight.
I think it should be tabled until the next meeting.
And that was gonna be my suggestion. So if we want to, do we wanna make a motion on it? Do we need a motion to table that until the next meeting?
I think so, and I will make a motion to table finalizing zoning ordinance.
We are going to insert the
Yes, the
outlet definition tonight. I have that in there. But, I agree, Rob's got, a great point. We got more we need to talk about before we can finalize that, so. We got a motion on the floor by Dan to table.
Second.
And a second by Adam to table the finalization of the zoning ordinance until the next meeting. All in favor?
Right,
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 10, information and announcements from PC members. I'll pick on you first.
Okay.
You got anything for us?
Not tonight.
All right, Patty. Again, welcome aboard.
Thanks,
and
Josh.
Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. James?
Terry brought up once before he left about those odd address signs. If you go around, they're almost all on trails.
Yes, they are all on trails.
I know, I have one right over here too, and it's a 61, 62 if I remember right, 10, whatever. But anyway, yeah, no, I don't know why,
Yeah, I go.
unless it's one is on the left side and one is on the right side.
If you go down
really
Milder,
know.
it's an easement in and 2 numbers there, but it's totally 3,000 out.
It's because the county doesn't recognize them as roads, so they recognize them as north, south, east, and west. So when they're addressing to the nearest road that's north, south, east, or west.
Oh, so it's not really on Mill or,
Right.
it's kind of confusing.
Well, that's part of the reason why the road right of way and how we define our subdivision of property is kind of important. We have to make sure that that's part of the reason for it, for emergency services.
Yeah, but that was the county that issues that address.
Okay, so, there is no way that we can address that as a town. Is that county or emergency government or?
We can ask the county to renumber them coming off the main road, but at this point, that would be a lot of changes.
There would be a lot of them. I mean, they're everywhere.
We have
Impacts a
a
lot of people
page
who
full
like
of
that.
trails. I have them on my desk, I keep track of them.
And it costs you to change your driver's license because you did it to me twice.
Well, it's their mailing and their billing and their driver's, I mean,
You're
it's
not-
pretty.
That would, you wanna talk about filling a meeting.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
But it's a nice thing to try to prevent from being a constant reoccurring
Right.
hiccup. If it can make more sense because it's done correctly, that's good.
Okay. Nothing else, Jim?
No, nothing for me.
All right. Christie?
Only one thing I've noticed, Lorelai, is at our little storage building down here, that the second
Yes.
big one that had the business.
Yes,
I saw him the other night
No,
working
it's-
on a hoist in there.
Now it's 4 doors down. Yeah, so the second door one seems to have closed his doors. But 4 doors down, yeah, he has a hoist,
Hoist and there's like 4
he
guys
has
in there.
welders going on in
Yeah.
there.
okay,
And
Great.
I don't know,
Good to
I
know.
don't know if it is a private person choosing
almost turned
to
around and
work
took a
on his
picture.
own stuff. Because he leaves his door wide open,
Yep.
so the business guy was shutting it and trying to be secretive.
Yeah,
This guy has his door wide open, so it may be
He's got
a
balls.
person just working on his stuff, but he has a
Well,
lot of
I mean,
stuff in there.
let me give you a little history on this. The previous plan commission approved his building with the idea that there were 50 amp services in each one of those bays, telling people that they can do whatever they want to do. And now I'm pulling him back, threatening to take away his business permit.
Right, I know.
Which I don't know if I can even do, to be honest. But I did send him a note and ask him to actually come down and view that second one that I complained about. And he says he'll have a conversation with them. And I said, the next time I have to talk to you, I will take it to the board and potentially an attorney.
Well, now it's the 4th one, and they were running welders in there, and there
So
was
it's
The other
the
night,
fourth
did
one
you
starting
say?
from this side?
yeah, from 4th one from this side.
Okay.
Yep,
Got
that's the bay I saw.
Yeah.
I almost turned around and took a picture. I couldn't believe it.
Please, somebody take a picture.
Well, and that's what I thought, maybe it was actually just somebody renting it, working on their own car kind of a situation, because they are blatantly door wide open, anybody can see in there what they're doing.
There was 4 guys in there and I think they were drinking.
That I'm not
Already-
sure of that, but.
Already in two, huh?
I didn't see it.
Josh, before you hang it up, I'd like to go over this email
Sure.
when you're done.
Yep.
That was all I had.
Good.
Was just
Rob,
a
anything?
heads up.
Okay, I don't have anything further. Dan?
No.
Angie? Adam?
Well. No, I'm very content.
All right.
Next meeting.
Yeah, the next meeting will be, and Lorelei, you're next, so.
Okay.
The next meeting will be, looks like June 11th.
And agenda item, the only one I've got, well, we're gonna continue, town buildings and finalize the zoning ordinance. I've got those 2.
Yep.
Okay.
And I honestly would, because we have quite a bit to talk about with town building updates and zoning ordinance, I'd like to keep that.
Small. There is one more item coming to you. Pete Gilson sign, innovative sign, the guitar.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah. I actually told him to bring it back because I had a conversation with him today.
Yep.
And I said, we just passed a new sign ordinance. You may want to bring it back and have him review it. So
Okay.
he was excited.
Good.
Okay, so I have Devin. Tonight, the Plan Commission asked me to forward these questions. Would it be possible to incorporate a voting area into the Public Works bays? What would change and what would the additional cost be? That's the first question. Second one, what would you recommend to cut down space for the Public Works, keeping 5 bays and the wash bay, limiting it to 6,500 square feet?
If possible.
Okay, if possible.
I think you just,
Okay. And then these were the determinations. Number 1, we have determined it would be in the best interest to phase the project, the Public Works building, to be first potentially started in the spring of 2027. The Public Works building to be first, potentially starting in the spring of 2027. Now, I had some other items on here, but we kind of talked them through, I think. Moving the EMTs into the Public Works building, everybody thought it was a better idea to have them have a separate building instead of making a space in there, or should I add that on to there?
What is the long term? Like, didn't you say at some point they may or may not have to have their own space?
Right, and then, yeah, I was hoping you guys heard that and took that in consideration, so. I didn't put anything on there to address that. And then, in the, administrative building, cost comparing having a basement or versus going above ground, but I think we talked through that too, because it was more of a firewall thing than a, other thing. The other thing I wanna, address, I don't know if I should address it in this email or just talk to you guys about it. We gave them $2,500. I'm thinking that money's gonna run out.
It is.
I'm surprised it wasn't already.
I'm surprised we got what we got so far.
Honestly, I was just.
So
gonna
do
say
I
the same thing.
address
think
that or
it's
just
out.
let them come back and
He'll say something when he's.
That's what I would
just leave it alone? Okay.
leave it until he
You
comes
can,
back and
you can
says.
put a little line in there about how much you appreciate, you know,
I just asked him what his favorite pie is.
I am not making him a pie.
and my wife might. Cheesecake though, not a pie. She's good. She got the cheesecake covered.
So we get together Saturday night with my brothers and I make pies. That's why he's referring to that.
Oh, sister.
Yes, yes, I am Nick's sister.
Every Saturday night we have it.
Yeah, my brothers and I get together. Okay, so I should stay in there just to let you know we appreciate everything that you're doing for us.
Yeah.
You know, and helping us get to the best possible solution for our town. Yeah.
Smiley face dollar sign.
I'm surprised you got the architect.
Okay, is there anything else that you want to be added on here because I don't have much done?
Are we concluding that it's likely that we'll tear down the existing public works building as
Well,
part
that's
of
what I
phase
was gonna
one?
say, you say our,
You know, with the timing of this
intentions are-
project, it's likely that we'll,
be tearing that down.
or at least that we're open
Okay.
to that. Yeah, I think that's worth mentioning in there.
I
is
got
that-
Okay,
Color meeting coming up the 20th.
Oh,
I'll
yes.
just save this for later.
Yeah, we do have the meeting on the 20th.
And I did not get permission to be able to get off and Zoom.
I
Yeah,
might
we
be able to
usually
make
sign
that
in at
one.
them anyway.
I honestly don't know if I'm gonna be able to.
I cannot, so there's no point in setting the Zoom up for me because it was a hard no.
okay.
So, yeah. I thought maybe I could just expand my lunch hour. They're usually really, really good at that, but it would have taken too long.
And that was at 1 o'clock, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
When's today? The 14th?
Yes, it is.
And the new building to be put in its place, in its approximate location?
Of the public works.
Okay.
So they're taking over my order.
I don't know what is, I don't know what's on there.
$150.
Mm-hmm. That's what Rob gets.
$500.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Okay, thank you.
I don't necessarily want this to open up a whole can of worms or anything, especially at 10 to 9, but adding on to this building doesn't seem like such a big, crazy project that you would need a Keller Builders to do it if you were.
No, we gotta put it out for bids then.
And you're gonna play your own general, so. What do you like, what's nice about having them is they're gonna create a spec book and we get to walk through it and say, no, I don't like this or I don't like that.
Yeah, and then they're gonna be the general, and then
Yeah.
if we don't like it, it's their problem.
That's what I said,
So
the spec
that's
book.
the addition, the benefit of having that type of stuff. I agree with what you're saying, Adam, that you know, go out and hire an architect, just like they did when they built the building over here, you know.
It's probably why he's not charging.
But,
Well, he can bid it, he knows.
well, most architects have, you know, they're working in an
There's other
engineering
background.
firm anyway, or whatever, half connections with engineers.
And current code, everything will be in code.
Yeah, you know, that Nick has a very good point. The reason Keller's probably staying in here is because besides the actual build, there's the bidding, the plans, yeah.
Yeah, they're looking at 10%.
That's probably why they're not charging.
Probably of
Well, he's gotta make
They're gonna
money
get their
somehow.
money. They're gonna get
He's
their
gotta
money.
make money
Yeah,
somehow.
yeah.
Well, and just to be clear, that 2,500 will not get us all the way to plans.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
no, then he did tell us that.
Right. That 2,500 was just to get.
Gets us right to the edge of that.
Right, get to the point of.
And then
are
you
we gonna
commit.
get plans?
Right,
And then they come back with whatever the plans cost.
right.
It's like.
Of these time cards I have, how many people
Shooting you a pie
are
and you can't have it.
gonna be able to make the 20th meeting?
Well, I think so, but
Try.
I'll just sign in on that day.
Okay.
Cause if I don't, I don't. you know.
Just make sure.
Is that
Paulette
another
knows.
Yeah.
time card then?
Done the
Is
last
it,
meeting.
is that
I would-
naughty?
What does she do?
No, I
Lorelei
don't think
said
that,
If you plan
Adding
on
a
coming
time
to the
card
meeting, I mean, if you plan
I
on
just
coming
don't
to
know.
Keller, you might as well hold off, because you're gonna have another per
well, and
diem.
that was just, if they make it, can they just fill out another time card?
Or remember you had
I
to
don't
sign
think
in?
Paulette's gonna yell at them.
Nope,
Lorelei,
I'm
remember you
pretty
had to
polite
sign
to
in over
Paulette,
it,
so
the
I
the
try.
last one?
me,
Stand.
Yeah.
That's good
We
grace.
signed the sheet?
I don't like that.
That wasn't.
Yes, I made sure Paulette
Oh, yeah.
looked at that sheet,
Okay.
yes.
Anything
I never
else?
sign in because she always knows
no.
I'm here.
I don't believe we have any
Yeah.
I'll make the motion.
Dan got
to
all the
adjourn.
motions, jeez.
motion by Dan to
I'll
adjourn.
second.
Patty,
Yay.
the most important
All in
one.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned
Unanimous.
at
Well,
I want
Fifty motions.
everybody,
Get the hell out of here.
before you leave, please look at your Keller book.